Hello and welcome to another Magic the Gathering video. So today I'm going to take a look at the Death Reaper deck, which is one of the 5 intro decks in the packs from the 2014 core set. So this particular deck is a black-red deck, and in it has 8 mountains, 17 swamps. Starting off with our 1-drops, we have 3 Festering Newt, 2 Tenacious Dead, 3 Ring Flesh, 1 Barrage of Expendables, 1 Smelt, 2 drops, 2 Child of Night, 2 Gnawing Zombie, 3 Thunderstrike, 1 Bubbling Cauldron, 3 drops, 2 Bloodbairn, 2 Undead Minotaur, 2 Academy Raider, 1 Act of Treason, 1 Staff of the Death Magus. Our 4 drops, Deathgaze Cockatrice, one of those, 1 Bogbrew Witch, 1 Liliana's Reaver, 5 drops, 2 Sengir Vampire, 1 Vampire Warlord, and finally 6 drops, we have 1 Minotaur Abomination, and finishing off 2 Corrupts. So one way you can find out about the basic play that you should use for this deck is to go online to the Wizard's website and look up the intro pack descriptions. So in it, for Death Reaper, what it's basically saying is that with the deck you try and get your small creatures out early as you can and start swinging with them, because hopefully at that stage, and of course this depends on how aggressive your opponent's deck is, your opponent may not have anything out to block that or anything to deal with it. So you're getting in damage early. As the game progresses, the potential to cast bigger cost creatures and hopefully creatures that can do more damage increases. In addition to that, there are a number of spells which are going to help you in combat situations. Ring Flesh, which is an instant, but also this could kill a 1 toughness creature as well. Or you've got pump spells like Thunderstrike, which is also an instant, and also in addition to pumping your power, gives the creature first strike on the creature. So pumping the target creature's power by +2 and giving it first strike. Now also in the deck, so like I said, as you go up, you know, your creatures are getting, well, apart from this one, but a lot of your creatures are getting slightly larger or have a slightly more, what's the word I'm looking for, threatening ability on them, like Death Touch, in the way that they will hopefully deal with any larger threats that your opponent might have. But in addition to that, and the way in which you will kill your opponent, there are a number of other ways that you know might result in your opponent dying. One way is through the use of Corrupt. So there's only 2 of these in the deck, and because this is a black-red deck, you know, I always find Corrupts obviously work best in a mono-black deck because you know you've got all swamps or a very large percentage of swamps if you're playing, say, a few utility lands as well. But with a Corrupt, you want it in basically a completely or very, very swamp heavy deck, and that way you're guaranteed to have swamps in play, which you can then use to do your damage, which is equal to the number of swamps you control. So in a deck like this, there's a good chance that you're not going to have as many swamps as you would like, and although you might be able to cast everything, it's not going to get the maximum benefit out of this Corrupt here. So that's something to watch out for. But this will finish off an opponent if their life is low and you're unable to maybe get through with the required damage from one of your other creatures. Additionally, to help with the creature damage side of things, you've got a creature like Sengir Vampire, which you can put counters on if it does damage to another creature. And you add those counters, and of course those counters stay on. So Sengir Vampire has the potential to get bigger. Lineana's Reaver also has Death Touch on it, but when it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. So you'll notice there's several abilities here on various creatures that trigger through combat damage happening. Some basically are better than others. Some pumps trigger through sacrificing a creature. So what you'll notice is there is a creature sacrifice theme in this deck. So maybe we'll look at that first of all. So in amongst all the other themes that are going on, and this is the problem my main issue with this deck is there's lots of different things going on, and I do find the deck is rather spread thinly in terms of all these different, almost like competing themes. And one thing that would help the deck is if you settled around a certain theme in the deck and stuck to it if you were thinking about modifying this. So one thing that this deck does have is it has what you could call the set synergy, or the set combo, which is a combo between Festering Newt, Bubbling Cauldron and Bogbrew Witch. So Festering Newt benefits from the Bogbrew Witch being in play, in that when it dies, instead of a target creature an opponent controls getting -1/-1, with a Bogbrew Witch in play, that goes to -4/-4. The Bogbrew Witch can also be used to tutor for not only Festering Newt, but also a card called Bubbling Cauldron. Now, Bubbling Cauldron is one of the mechanisms in the deck which you can use to sacrifice the Festering Newt if you want to force it to die rather than wait for an opponent to try and dispense with it. So if you sacrifice any creature in the deck to Bubbling Cauldron, you gain 4 life. However, if you sacrifice Festering Newt, you get what is effectively life gain. So your opponent actually loses 4 life and you gain 4 life. Also, this card has implications for multiplayer because it says each opponent loses 4 life. So sticking with that sacrifice theme, you'll also notice that a lot of the cards themselves have some form of, like when the creature dies, trigger on it. So you've got Tenacious Dead. So when that dies, you can pay 1 and a black and you can return it to the battlefield. You can use basically the cost on the Barrage of Expendables, the enchantment, for when you want to sacrifice a creature is one red. But unfortunately, not only have you got to pay that 1 red and sacrifice a creature, you would have also paid a 1 red to get this into play, and all you're getting back is 1 damage. So yes, it is a way in which you could say sacrifice your Festering Newt, and you would get something off of Festering Newt, even more if you had a Bogbrew Witch in play, but what you actually get out of the Barrage of Expendables is very little. If you take an example of a card like Fling, that will give you a lot more, but it does cost more in terms of the casting cost. So going down, we've also got, there's some lifelink in here. We have Gnawing Zombie, another card that lets you sacrifice a creature. So we have lots of ways that we can sacrifice our Festering Newt or our Tenacious Dead if we want to do it. Also we have Bloodbairn, which if we sacrifice a creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. But the other problem I notice with this deck is that there's no way of exploiting the fact that those creatures are effectively moving zones when you do that. They're going from the battlefield to the graveyard, and there's nothing in here apart from the fact that Tenacious Dead brings itself back, either to bring useful creatures back from the graveyard or to exploit the fact that you do have creatures in your graveyard, or the fact that, you know, as the game progresses, creatures are dying. So if I was going again, say with that theme, because one thing is to basically go, okay, let's build a combo deck around Festering Newt, Bogbrew Witch and Bubbling Cauldron, and then play cards which synergize with those. So you could end up with a mono black deck, or you could end up with a mono black deck with some burn in it. So that will be one option. Another option is to play around with just the and it would, you could actually tie it in with actually this combo, but it's to play around with the sacrifice and try and find cards which benefit. So maybe cards from Innistrad which have Morbid on them, which benefits you when creatures die in a turn. So anything with Morbid on might be of use, might be of synergy in a deck where you've got creatures deliberately being killed off, being sacrificed. So that could also work as an option here. As I've said, we have a small amount of token stuff going on, and I'm trying to remember where that was. Liliana's Reaver. We've got token zombies being produced. So is there anything out there that, you know, synergizes well with that, and is that an angle you would want to take it on? And, you know, like I said, this is the main problem with this deck I have, is that there's lots of different things going on. The deck in its current format, I think, is trying to do too many different things, and not really synergizing as well as it could do with some of the sacrificing and some of the other stuff that's going on. So if you were to take a look at the insert that they give, you know, what suggestions are there that you could do? Well, these are the three cards that they mention that might benefit in the deck. One is this card called Goblin Rally. So what this does is this generates plenty of creatures to sacrifice. It generates 4 1/1 red goblin creature tokens that you could use for that. So with this card, what you're doing is taking the deck and adding in extra sack material to work with. Dark Prophecy takes the position of looking at the fact you've got these creatures dying and they're your creatures, and gives you card draw, but at the expense of you losing life, which you will often find with black and card draw. And then Shadowborn Demon. When Shadowborn Demon enters the battlefield, destroy a target non-demon creature. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are fewer than 6 creature cards in your graveyard, sacrifice a creature. So this is actually exploiting the fact that you're probably going to have lots of creatures in your graveyard. So that's taking advantage of that fact. Another thing you could do, beyond just looking at suggestions that are out there from Wizards, is to go on to the Gatherer, which is the database of sort of, it's Magic the Gathering sort of official Magic database for their cards, and looking for certain keywords. So a search I've got here, I'm looking for basically anything in red or black that contains the word sacrifice creature. And so I get a list of things. There's Fling there. I mentioned that earlier as an alternative to the card that's in there, because this, with Fling, you get deals damage equal to the sacrifice creature's power to a target creature or player, rather than just a damage of 1. It's 1 and a red instead of just a single red. So that might give you ideas for cards that either that work with the whole sacrifice synergy. And then the other thing you could do is look at Morbid. So with Morbid, what it does is it triggers if a creature dies in a turn. So normally there's an extra thing that can happen if you've had a creature die, and obviously in a deck which is sacrificing creatures, there's a high chance that's going to happen. So again, you've got removal spell like Tragic Slip, which is greatly enhanced by creatures dying, and you might want that in the deck instead of the other removal that you have. So there we have just an overview and a a breakdown of the deck and what you can do in it. Let's just take a quick look at our mana curve to put things into perspective. So you can see, obviously, not surprisingly, a larger percentage of 1-drops here, because ultimately a lot of those 1-drop creatures are going to become our sacrifice targets later in the game. Just again to give you a feel for certain things, let's have a quick look at the rarity in here. So we've got 2 rares, Bogbrew Witch and Liliana's Reaver in there. I'm just trying to remember actually what is the foil card while we're talking about rares. Yep, Liliana's Reaver is actually the foil in there. And the other thing that's always a good idea to just quickly look at is the type. So we have out of this we have 13 non-creature spells to 22. Again, we would expect a slightly higher percentage of creatures because of the sacrifice nature of the deck. And there again we can just see our sort of, if we wanted to see our creature curve. So you got 2 1-drops, 2 2-drops. Oh, actually, no, there's more than that because of course they've each got their count. But that just gives you some idea there of the creature curve. Our instants, which are our Ring Flesh, our Smelt, our Thunderstrikes, our sorceries, which are Active Treason, and our corrupts. Barrage of Expendables was an enchantment, and then a couple of artifacts in there. So again, just a different way of looking at the deck. And there we have it. We've got the Death Reaver deck from the 2014 core set, one of the 5 intro decks. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.